Hello, good afternoon. Part of the human condition, part of what makes us different is that some things come easy to some people and other things, or some things, need a lot of work for other people. And I've been pretty forthcoming about the things I have to work on. Extended periods of clarity, extended periods of bliss, although in all honesty, I do appreciate that both of these conditions are what I've referred to as earlier as bouts. I do have bouts of clarity and bouts of bliss. And in my opinion, that makes them all the more worthy. I appreciate them because the ephemeral condition. And as a INFJ, I find I struggle with balance. I'm either all in or all out. And for many years in my Raja Yoga, strict discipline of denial, of making effort to stop my mind, to quiet my mind. I was also very, very aware of the middle way that Buddha spoke so highly of. And I'd always try to pigeonhole myself into these narrow, constricting, and quite honestly, self-defeating efforts to meet the standards of what I felt a good Buddhist was. And it wasn't until I discarded I gave up on attaining these conditions for Buddhahood as I saw it at the time. If you can't do this and you can't do that, you can't practice the middle way, you can't silence your mind so that you're enveloped in clarity 24/7. And that bliss is only a blink away at any given moment. I'm laughing now because the idea of living in bliss, for me as a curmudgeon, a grumpy old man, I need my grumpiness at times because it is part of who I am, after all. My personality, which I've talked about, does not seem to disappear no matter how able you are to live in a non-dual world, to see unity instead of division and separation. Doable for me. And, I balked. I hesitated. More than hesitated, much stronger than hesitated. Fought all the way of somehow conquering or training or disciplining my mind. After all, it was the only constant in a sea of change. Ego has been said as our coping mechanism, how we cope with the world as we see it at any given time. Until the time comes that you discard, you disrobe your egoic structure. Mostly because it supports separation and division. So, my lifelong dream. My mom would tell me that from 4 to 6, she remembers me saying that I wanted to become a Buddha. And she was a little puzzled at that time because I used the word Buddha and she wasn't sure how I even had that in my lexicon. How was it in my vocabulary? And she laughed and she chuckled. But the consistency, the number of times it came up, I think in the end convinced my mom that I was serious on this path. So imagine 30 to 40 years of rigorous Raja yoga, sitting straight, disciplining the body, trying to corral the mind. I didn't have a problem with my monkey mind. My mind was never full of useless chatter. It was always a work in progress, determining through the lens of my highly skeptical nature to evaluate, to recognize what's not so. I just wasn't equipped. If you took away my mind, I just wasn't equipped to eliminate what's not so. My mind helped me discriminate. So it wasn't until I gave up the sought after conditions of clarity and bliss. I thought clarity came from silencing the mind. In not only had I been unsuccessful at quieting, silencing my mind, I was resistant, naturally resistant to doing so. In jhana yoga, where the mind is an active participant in this action, in this expression. But I still would time to time be revisited by old haunting memories of what I recognized as, what I carried as failures. Failure to silence my mind. Failure to abide in a constant state of clarity or bliss. But a big failure was the middle way. And as I saw the middle way, I thought it was about balance. Don't do too much, don't do too little. Seek balance. Seems to me the middle way was through balance. And being a personality who is all in, or take my marbles and go home, not playing. Half-assed efforts were of less than zero interest to me. But a few months ago, I spent a lot of time looking at silence. And before I saw silence as a condition that preceded clarity, that it was a state you had to reach in order to be clear. And I discovered that I completely underestimated the value of silence. Not only underestimated its value, but underestimated what it entailed. What is it to be in a state of silence? Is it the absence of noise? And this is leading me to today's talk about balancing noise and silence. And to look at what this entails. Is it something that I should pursue? Or is it something that I should just accept that my personality, which is a big part of my nature, is just not prepared or have a propensity or a fondness for my limited understanding of balance. Balance as equal as balancing on a fulcrum. A scale, the scales of justice. Should the world be balanced? Should I attain balance so that I'm in harmony with the condition of the world. And when I started looking at balance as more of an equal action or reaction, cause and effect, the effect and the cause, the intensity of these should be, and indeed is, the same, the pendulum swinging to perpetuity. And thus, equality, equal balance. As I've mentioned before, and I'll go into a little more detail now. The last few months, I've been home alone. My wife is off in Taipei, house sitting for her parents and taking care of their cat, while I'm here in Hualien, house sitting, I guess, and taking care of our cat. But purpose of sharing this is that mostly I'm in silence. And when I'm talking about the polarities of silence, I use noise. Or more appropriately, sound. I don't know, sound is a much better, it resounds. It sounds better than noise. I'm really into the sounds of words. Some words, simply saying them, give me comfort. Umbrella. Why? Yeah. Umbrella is a word that gives me comfort. Just the sound and where it comes through, the mechanism of speech. So the title here was The Balancing of Silence and Sound. Noise is annoying. I don't like loud noise. Me and my kitty, our kitty, have that in common. A loud noise and he's gone. Probably some trauma when he was a kitten, because he is, after all, a rescue kitty. He was found by someone on the street. So no one really knows his story, but there's definitely some trauma there. And who's to say that I didn't have this trauma to noise? After all, me and Kitty seem to be kindred souls. So, abiding in silence. I do not like to talk on the phone. There's probably no more than 2 or 3 people that I enjoy talking with on the phone. But I'd much rather sit down over a good cup of espresso and share in a intimate, quiet zone, area. Shelter from the storm, as I've said before, safe harbor. So I prefer texting as my means of communication. It used to be email, but my email is really been curtailed, and I prefer texting on my iPhone. And I have all the bells and whistles turned off on my phone all the time. The ringer is never on. So if I'm wearing earpods, it will interrupt the music and I can take the call. Otherwise, I notice the missed call when I'm checking my texts. So not occasion to talk, not an occasion to make sounds. 95% of my time, especially recently, I've been embracing silence. The 5% is here when I'm with you. And although I can feel you guys out there, I don't hear. There's no sound than the sound of my own voice. And if you look at my hits, if you look at how often people watch my sharings, very, very small numbers. And I'm grateful to those of you who do. But my expectation of this process that started only in January and that now includes about 140 half-hour videos. Quite a bit I've been churning out, and only as the Spirit moves me. But essentially what I'm doing here is chronicling for myself my journeys and navigation through 70 years of life. So essentially, while motivated to help wherever I can help, essentially, this is a work of completion. This is a celebration on my part of the ups and the downs, the valleys of my spiritual path, my inquiry. So balance, as you can see, I'm either all in even to doing these. Maybe I'd be better off, better served to build an audience. But I'm not even operating that way. Maybe too much of a good thing, too often. But as I'm inspired, as each of these are, it would be foolish on my part to ignore this impulse that puts me in this chair, looking at this screen, in this room, every other day, with the express purpose of doing what I'm doing now. Sharing, wrinkles and all. So, as far as balancing silence and sound, if balance indeed does mean equal amounts as a scale, this much sound, this much silence, if this is the middle way. And I remember addressing the middle way some time ago and having an understanding that it wasn't what I always had thought it to be. So surprise, surprise. Most things, upon scrutiny, upon experience, experiential methodology, when you go through something, you're usually gifted if you pay attention, if you witness, you're usually gifted with some sort of insight. So what do I change? I have a personality that's all in or all out. And I'm looking for not doing things to extreme. Is this temperance? Is this something, a condition that needs to change in my being? This all in or all out. This example of extreme behavior. I'm tired. I gave up on trying to curb my enthusiasm, as they said in a interesting TV show. I'm tired of curbing propensities that are just part of me. This is how I am, and I'm okay with that. I don't have the energy or the drive to curb any elements of my behavior that give me positive feedback as simply being who I am. So it goes with this balancing concept. If balancing means spending an equal time talking and an equal time silent, I can rest assured that I'll be in one of these extremes. If I'm with the right person in the right environment in the right time, talking sound, I don't stop. People say, "Well, you're so talkative," without spending time with me, realizing that 95% of the time I'm completely silent. unless I'm talking to my computer, or more likely to Kitty. I talk to him constantly. He's a good listener. Very good listener. And doesn't seem to judge me based on what I share with him. So I call this giving yourself a break. Toughest discipline of Raja Yoga, trying to silence my favorite tool only to gain a condition, clarity, that's not sustainable for me. Somehow, clarity represents an element of didactism, assuredness that limitation that this view is correct. This flies in the face of my natural skepticism, my condition that never leaves me of doubt. So any effort in going counter to who I am. We're talking about personality, which persists throughout spiritual inquiry, even though we recognize that we're simply part of the whole, does not eliminate the fact of our uniqueness. This uniqueness, I'm not sure really if the personality persists after the body doesn't exist any longer. That's in the metaphysical realms of mostly useless speculation, useless for our purposes now to be the best we can be, to see unity instead of division, to embrace through love and compassion all those around us as we extend to encompass as much as we can.